Hello, everyone, and welcome to today's webinar. My name is Alec Cooley, and I'm the Senior Advisor here with Busch Systems, and I'm going to be your moderator for today's program. So I want to welcome everybody. Our topic today is rebuilding confidence in recycling, which I think many of us have been seeing some of the skepticism and some of the concerns that the public is raising. And this is definitely an important and timely topic. So I'm excited that we're going to get a chance to really sort of dive into this and break this down a little bit more. But obviously, there's been a lot of turmoil in the industry. It's been creating a lot of confusion and doubt. Again, I think that this will be a good conversation today to get a better idea of how we can be responding to it. So I am joined today by three other panelists I'm excited to have join us. I'm going to be speaking first, do a couple points just to sort of offer some of my own thoughts at the outset to frame the topic, but then I'm going to bring up Elizabeth Schuessler, who is the Senior Director of Social Change, Behavior, and Impact with the Recycling Partnership. And then following Elizabeth's presentation, we're going to hear from Rachel Kennedy and Justin Garvey. Rachel Kennedy is an environmental specialist with Dakota County, Minnesota. And Justin Garvey is with Meter, the Director of Branding Strategy. And they're going to be talking about a PSA campaign that they've been doing in the Twin Cities area of Minnesota, again, addressing this specific issue around skepticism and confidence. So before I jump in, you obviously folks are going to have their lines muted, but we do encourage as much interaction as we can throughout the program. If you have questions that you would like specifically addressed by the presenters, put those into the Q&A function. When we're going to hold those to the end, but I will bring up and verbalize questions that come in. If you just want to offer thoughts, if you want to chat, have discussion, which again, we do encourage having some interaction, do that in the chat function. So just keep that straight. If questions go into the chat, we may or may not actually see them and bring them up. So just keep that in mind as we go through. Good. So to kick things off, I'll say a couple points just to sort of frame this topic. There's been a lot going on in recent years. A lot of stories, a lot of issues that we've been hearing, about problems about the recycling industry. In a few minutes, Elizabeth is going to jump in and talk a little bit more about some of the science of behavior change and how that relates to this topic. What I want to do is to frame the topic is up front is just offer some of my own observations from talking with folks and things that I've seen is a way of sort of kicking things off. So there are a lot of problems that we've seen, I think, that have shaken even the faith of those of us who have worked in the industry for a long time. Recycling, we've always thought of as being this great thing that has that's automatically a positive, but we know that there are problems with how the system itself works. We also know that it ties into some of these larger, broader issues that are really more than just about recycling, but single use, lots of problems around plastics, issues that, again, transcend recycling, but definitely tie into it. And we can see how this is definitely shaking the faith of a lot of folks. And it's important that we address that and also understand how we go about doing that. I do want to, before we jump in, I do want to make an observation, though, that I know some of those of you who are attending today, you might have your own concerns or skepticism about recycling, and certainly we respect that. And we want to encourage to have a productive conversation through the chat. But I do want to make the observation that today's program is not about debating the merits of recycling or not. It's not about sort of raising some of these other fundamental issues. Our audience today is primarily local recycling, sustainability, facility managers, communication folks who are looking simply on how to address public issues locally. So there are opportunities to engage with broader industry stakeholders, but today is really just about how we effectively communicate. And so I would ask that we keep the chat primarily function on those issues. Obviously, we want this to be an open dialogue, but please keep that in mind as we go through. So before we get started, I think it is important just to remind ourselves that recycling is in fact relevant. As I said, I think a lot of us have had our own faith shaken about some of the things we've heard, but there are some fundamental realities of recycling that we have solid evidence for. Recycling is real. It's not a myth. And I think it's important to put up some of these high-level facts. These are all coming from the most recent reports that the US EPA put out. Although the data is a few years old, it nonetheless just points to the basic realities of what recycling is able to deliver. We do collect, close to 70 million tons of material is not going to the landfill, and that has a concrete positive impact on the environment. You can see the stats here. I'm not going to read through all of them, but certainly around the ability to reduce greenhouse gases, the jobs, the economic activity that it supports. These are all real and concrete. And I think we need to remind ourselves that we're representing something that is real and that has real value, and we need to help the public understand and make that concrete. Even as we acknowledge that there are problems and there are things that we need to address, I think one of the silver linings of the last few years is that we are starting to address some of these structural problems that have been allowed to go on for a long time. So I think that is all very positive. But going forward, one of the things we need to do is make sure that the public is joining us and that we're not leaving them behind because of festering questions and confusion that is out there. I will make a quick observation. I hope to have a blog published before this program that really sort of addresses some of the common myths and perceptions, right or wrong, about recycling. But it's not ready, but it's something that we will, once that's published in the next week or two, we'll send out a notice. But the intention of that is designed to put some of these facts and figures in writing and be able to actually point to real evidence, something that can be a pass-through resource to help share with your own audiences that you may be interacting with. So again, look for that in the coming weeks. So many of you have heard this anecdotally, obviously, but just to put some hard numbers to this, there is real observed evidence here about how this rise of skepticism is taking place. This is research I know Elizabeth may refer to some research that the Recycling Partnership has done. I've seen it from other sources, but this is one in particular from the Shelton Group that I think is worth looking at simply because of the trend line. If we go back to 2019, when people were asked, how confident are you that the items you put into recycling bin actually get recycled? It was a 14% were saying they were not confident about that. And we can see how that has increased each year ever since. And I think this is a direct reflection on some of the media dialogue and other things that are coming out. So this is real. This is concrete. It's not just sort of anecdotal, something that we're hearing in our own communities. What are some of the contributing factors to this? Many of these can be very familiar, but I think it's worth just highlighting some of the different issues that are contributing to this, because it's not a monolithic, all one size fits all that people are reacting to. Obviously, we've had a lot of the industry crises around a Chinese national sword policy that created the backups and markets that had a ripple effect to our local communities. We've seen a lot of headlines, and these are not monolithic. Some of them are focused on real concrete issues, but we also know that there are a lot has been sort of at best simplistically shouted out on headlines, if not outright misinformation, and these have had a real impact. We also know this ties into other very real issues that go upstream from what we're able to control on the recycling side. We're dealing with all these issues with packaging that make it hard to actually recycle and lead to some of that confusion. And there is real concrete greenwashing that has happened, I think, on the packaging and product side that also contributes to this. Again, we're not going to dive into this, but I think it's worth sort of acknowledging the breadth of what's creating some of these perceptions. Internally, this is not just purely about media stories. There are real instances of problems that have been reported. I know in my community, right here in Charleston, South Carolina, we had broad headlines about examples of recyclables being sent to the landfill because it was actually happening on a limited scale, but these get blown up into much larger issues than they are that leave an impression of a systematic problems. I would also argue, and again, this is more about my anecdotal impressions, but I think some of the broader issues that have been happening for a long time now are also feeding some of this. People have been confused about recyclability for years now. We keep talking about this. We have problems with contamination, and it continues to be sort of an ongoing source of confusion. And I would argue that this is sort of, over time, this starts turning into just outright frustration. And I think that also feeds a little bit of this, and points to our need to get a better handle on how we message and address that confusion. I think I think it's important that we have a conversation. We go back and we look at just our public communications, how we as recycling officials have communicated, and understand where how we've set up some unintended consequences around that trust and transparency. For a long time, we might know there are problems that are going on in the background, and we don't want to highlight those. So how much information do we share? How much information can the public really interpret? I think at times we've been a little too conservative, and it set up recycling to some extent on a pedestal that made it really easy to knock over as far as the expectations we were setting. In some cases, I think a little too simplistic, that recycling is all good, or messaging around we just it all goes into the bin. All those, in some ways, I think have set us up for creating some of the confusion and issues that folks have. So I think another issue definitely, and I think we'll hear probably a little bit more from Elizabeth, but this ties into, there are broader issues that have nothing to do with recycling or the environment at all, but there's a certain breakdown of faith in our society right now around just institutions in general. And I suspect some of these questions you can start to see addressed on a generational basis or on income level will contribute to perceptions. But this is research I'll just point to from 2016 that we did when I was with Keep America Beautiful, where we asked some of these questions about asking people what percent are skeptical about whether or not recycling actually gets collected, whether does it all go into the same truck. And you'll see here how there's a big difference in these numbers based on the age range. So I think it's important to keep in mind that this is also a factor in this issue. But at the end of the day, we know that people in general believe in recycling. To some degree or another, they may be motivated, but most people are starting from a perspective of, well, this is a plus. This is a good thing. Our job has primarily been about how do we engage them, get them into a rhythm, further animate and make this a more engaged topic for them, giving them the right information they need to do it correctly. That's been a lot of our focus with the messaging traditionally over in recent decades. I'll end off with just making the observation that for me, this is a different issue. This is working on a different dynamic because in general, to the degree that people believe in recycling or are engaged, it's all predicated on the idea that, well, it's doing a positive thing. But what if you don't think it is? What if you think that this is a waste of my time? Nobody wants to feel that their time is being wasted. It doesn't matter what demographic you are, what your beliefs are or attitudes politically or on environmental issues at all. Nobody wants to feel like their time is being wasted. And we know that with the limited attention span that people give to recycling and waste, we have to hold on to them, because if you start to lose them and you allow that perception to sink into their heads that this is all fake or this is all, it's not even good for the environment, if you allow those perceptions to set in, that creates a real risk of people's behavior going forward years from now in a ways that'll be very hard to undo if that's allowed to lock into place. So I think this is, to me, a critical issue that we be addressing now and be looking for ways to message and address some of these perception issues. So with that, I'm going to hand it over to Elizabeth in a moment. But before we do, just want to again encourage some engagement in the chat. Would love to hear your experience. What are you experiencing on the ground? Are you doing examples of outreach campaigns? Do you have pro tips or the things that you've done in your own community, strategies to try and address some of these issues? We're going to be hearing more examples as we go forward, but would love to see these, share some of these in the chat. After the program, we will curate and we'll take some of the better examples, and we'll publish these along with the recording. We'll make sure everything's anonymous, but if you do have advice that you want to share, we do want to make that available for folks going forward after the program. So with that, let me hand it over to Elizabeth Schuessler, who is again the Senior Director of Social Change, Behavior, and Impact with the Recycling Partnership. And Elizabeth, go ahead and take things away.
Thank you, Alec. It's so good to be here and to have so many active voices in the chat. Thank you very much. I will try to cover a lot of things that are maybe in the chat, but also I have some of our research that I want to share. So waiting for control, but as I wait for that, I know there are a mix of people here on this webinar who are people who are the educators, people who are planning messaging, and people who are delivering products or running a facility. So I think there's something for everyone here. So again, I'm Elizabeth Schuessler with Recycling Partnership. We have a Center for Sustainable Behavior and Impact, but it is our 10-year anniversary this year. We are a nonprofit. We work nationally, and we are very interested and aware and concerned about the system and the system working cost effectively. Our bread and butter in the past had been giving access to homes, providing new access to households that did not have the ability to recycle. We also work with residents to get the right material in the right bin, whether it's talking about contamination, things being in the recycling that should be in the trash, or things that are recyclable being in the trash that should be in recycling. We call that capture. And then we work with the facilities, because if the things can't reasonably be sorted and have a baled and have a market, it doesn't make sense to recycle them. So we push on the brands and the policies to make sure that the things that are expected are actually deliverable. So we assist and insist. Recycling is loosely connected, but highly dependent. So it is a unique system where these things that come into our homes, have been designed in one place and produced and filled and labeled and sold and brought into the home, and then they're picked up and then they go to a facility. So there are many hands, there are many partners on this, and that's why we set ourselves up to be a partnership, because we want to work with all the stakeholders. So I want to start off talking with you a little bit about some of our recent research. This is ethnographic research. We went into homes of people who were and weren't recycling and spent an hour and a half with them talking about how they feel about recycling, how they came to recycle, why they may not recycle, what they feel about recycling. So this couple, we estimate that they have about 680 pounds per house in their household per year of recyclables, and their history of recycling, where they lived before they were doing it, where they live now. They're feeling like it's maybe not supported by the city and maybe not supported by their neighbors. There's no rallying support. So also their program doesn't take glass. So if they were to recycle everything that they could, they'd need to take about 20 trips to the glass drop-off, and they would have about 10 pounds per trip, and that would take about 30 minutes round trip, and then the rest of their recyclables are picked up curbside. So there's when we ask people to recycle, we need to better understand what is it that's in the way for them. This woman is in a studio apartment. She's in a very, very small place. She does maybe not have as much material. She's not generating as much recyclables in her house, but she has to put it in a car and drive it to the collection center. She does not have a car. So that's a real challenge for her. So that's something that we're working on again. This couple in another city, their city only has drop off. And while they have a couple of drop off locations, they had lived somewhere else and they're frustrated with the waste services. They have trash in alleys that are collected in kind of communal bins in the back. And so there's a big dumpster in the alleys behind all the households in this town. And sometimes people just dump their trash. And so waste in general is a challenge for them. They're doing their best. They're going to drop off. They're taking things to work, that sort of thing. And so what I want to talk to you about today is this, like where the concepts of trust and confidence are rooted. So trust is really about a feeling. I've heard a couple of people in the chats have a lot of feelings, and I totally get it, and it's understandable. So it relies on feelings. When we have a belief or faith that something is going to happen and it doesn't, and it's frustrating, and we have read in a newspaper or heard somebody's neighbor or somebody's friend saw something, it really challenges trust. And what trust relies on is that willingness to be vulnerable. And it's like, how many times can we expect someone to give their trust? Confidence, on the other hand, relies on the actions, and people are keeping score. They have an expectation and they're living out of the past. So what we need to do is figure out how to address both trust and confidence. We need to be able to compel people to have the willingness to act out of the faith that their recycling is worth their time, and reassure their trustworthiness of the labels, of the service, and of the things that are actually recycled. We also need to demonstrate reliability. So I heard someone mentioning or saw someone mentioning the truck that is maybe picking up trash and recycling. That does happen. And because we don't have a communications infrastructure to let people know that that is happening, people are maybe assuming the worst from that. So a couple of sort of building blocks is the promise of recycling. We know from our research that recycling is a strongly felt social good. And we know that a good number, but not as many that are believing that things are made into new things. The other things that are important is the high level of confidence. So we know that people who have a good relationship with their local program have received communications also feel better about the recycling. They report that they are recycling more often, and that they are more trusting. But that lived experience. So if we often talk about making recycling easier, and so I think it's important for programs to figure out, what does that mean? What does it mean to make it easier, more trustworthy? And there are a lot of places where we can better signal that trustworthiness. So the increased communication and transparency is the main thing that people are asking for. And again, what does that mean? Like, how do we communicate in a way that they can hear? And how do we offer information that feels like transparency, but is something that someone can trust and think about for themselves? So we went into segmentation research. We segmented curbside households because we can most quickly measure and do an activation, so an intervention and then a measurement. We did not do a demographic segmentation. We didn't go into it with an expectation, but the demographic segmentation didn't really tell us a story. But the psychographic characteristics, the demographics at some level, the behavioral and the needs, the frustrations, were really where that landed. Now, be patient with me. There are a lot of words on this slide, and I will encourage you to download our segmentation report. Lydia will drop the link in the chat for you at some point. But the segmentation came out with 5 kinds of recyclers. What you see here is these 2 groups are more dedicated and these 3 are less dedicated to recycling. Now, there were 12% of people across the study that said they did not recycle, and they were not in any one particular group. They were spread across the 5 groups. So what you see here is social and emotional. That's kind of what sort of moves these people. Private and practical. They don't need to talk about it, they just want to do it. These people also, private and practical, they don't really want to spend a lot of time communicating about it. They don't need to know more. But in those groups, there's also a lot of feelings. So these 2 more dedicated groups, obviously they have more positive feelings. There are a lot more words here that are positive. In this side, there's a lot more negative feelings, honestly, confusion and guilt and doubt and worry and too much effort and resentment. And so what I want you to consider, and I know this is a lot of information that is impossible to read on this slide, but just trust me, you'll get it in the follow-up, is no one, as Alex said, no one wants to feel foolish or wrong or disappointed. No one wants to. So we need to build a system that works to help people reduce, reuse, and recycle in ways that they feel good about. We can talk with people about reduce, but not everyone wants to reduce. We can talk to people about reuse, but not everyone wants to reuse. We can talk to people about recycling, but not everyone wants to recycle. But we can help people 8 and 10 feel like it's a good thing to waste less, to reduce and reuse and recycle. So we came out of this important segmentation research and looked at, I'm going to back up a second, and looked at these 3 groups that are having more pain points. And we were thinking, what can we do to reach out to them, to talk to them? Because we realized in the research that we were spending a lot of time talking to the people who are already on board and who are already recycling. And we need to talk to the people who are more on the fence. And we wanted to know, like, how can we reach them? So we put together this test. We created, oh gosh, there was quite a bit of research and message testing. We hired multiple firms to work on it, and we had our internal designers work on it as well. And so we came up with these 3 trends out of this narrowing process through research. An empathetic approach, which shows a cat and a hedgehog, and the hedgehog is saying, confused about recycling, I get it. The logical, which explains, okay, don't worry, here's where your stuff is going. When we pick it up, it becomes new things. Here are the benefits that happen when it becomes new things and when you recycle. Or this kind of stark emotional message of ever wonder what tomorrow will bring. So I'm going to ask you to pick which one of these do you think happened? When we actually rolled them out into test, which one do you think happened to have the most impact as measured by more recycling? So which one prompted more recycling? Empathetic, logical, emotional, or none of the above? Oh, I see some chat. I think we're going to run a real live poll, but it might cover up part of your window. I can't vote. So a couple more seconds and we will find out the results of that. I see a lot of mixed answers, and that's really how we went into it. Is like we had people who on our staff and these designers who are like, this is the answer, and other folks like, no, this is the answer. Anything with a talking cat. That's fantastic. None of them. Yeah, I think that it's, I think it's reasonable to think that there are some people who think none of them work. Well, the truth of the matter is the empathetic message won out. We saw more results with that. And the case study again is available for download. And then the emotional was slightly behind it, and the logical, which so many recycling professionals choose, was did not have, compared to the control, did not have any results. So we need to unpack, the logical message and testing some more ways, because our team is having a hard time letting go that logic doesn't answer this for people. But top line, what about your messaging? Just take fresh eyes and look at your messaging. And what about it feels like an invitation? We give so many correctional and instructional messages to people, but what is it that feels like a welcoming invitation, not an explanation? Because an explanation, people don't always have patience for an explanation. The last thing I want to share with you is the Recycling Partnership, nonprofit. We are working to connect the system. We have a recycling program solutions hub where communities can verify what is accepted in their program. And then our national database takes that information that communities control and can provide information that could be like scanning a package. There are a couple of packages that already have a QR code that links to this chatbot that we're continuing to roll out new packages with the QR code. We're continuing to find new ways to deploy the QR code, and we're continuing to find new collaborations to sort of solutions that are powered by this national database. So thank you, Lydia, for putting the links to those to the hub in there. On the other side of this, like behind this database, there are also more courses and more information that you can find from us about recycling. So I think that's it for me. Give you the links to contact myself and our team, and we're going to have to do this, work on this trust and confidence together. So thanks for being here today and being part of the solution.
Great. That was great information, Elizabeth. Thank you for sharing that. I think especially breaking down sort of this trust and confidence and understanding the nuance that this is, again, people are complicated. There's a lot to really break down and understand, but this is great information. So why don't we? We're just gonna. Let me give you 1 second. Let's go ahead and jump in. Let me bring up Rachel Kennedy, who is an environmental specialist with Dakota County, Minnesota, as well as Justin Garvey, again, Director of Brand Strategy with Leader. And we'll hear this case study on how these communities in Minnesota have addressed this. And then again, go ahead and put in any questions you have for the end, and we'll bring these up when we get to the end of their presentation. And okay, Rachel, you should have control of the cursor now.
Thank you so much. Hi, everyone. Thank you for this opportunity to be here. My name is Rachel Kennedy. I'm an environmental specialist in Dakota County, Minnesota. I work in the Environmental Initiatives Program, where I lead the communications efforts in our program areas like recycling, but also waste reduction and reuse, organics, and household hazardous waste. I'm excited to co-present the motivation behind and the development of the Recycling Exists campaign in the Twin Cities metro area. So just waiting on the screen to switch. Seeing a lot of really great comments in the chat that I think this case study will help address. Great. So first, I want to give some location context to everyone here. The Twin Cities 7-county metro area, or Twin Cities metro area, is located kind of in the middle to southern half of Minnesota. Consists of Anoka, Carver, Dakota, Hennepin, Ramsey, Scott, and Washington counties. the Twin Cities in Hennepin, Minneapolis, and St. Paul, located in Hennepin and Ramsey County, respectively, the largest cities in this area. Population is 3.16 million people just in this area, and that accounts for over half of the entire population of Minnesota. And in Minnesota, counties are required by the state to provide recycling education. So what sparked our campaign? Given what we've heard from the previous speakers, none of these headlines should be surprising, especially for those working in recycling and recycling education. But it was ultimately this third-party private billboard that ignited our desire to kind of take an educational approach to the next level. So this billboard is from a waste reduction initiative from this company, and the counties are also involved in waste reduction efforts. And so we really think that there's room to promote both waste reduction and recycling at the same time. And you can do both of those things without denying the validity of one or the other. So on that note, I would love to first show you our video.
Tall tales, myths. Think what you want about us, but we can all be certain of this. Recycling is real, and it works. But what happens to your recycling once it leaves your home? Recycled glass is sorted in St. Paul. Then the clear glass is made into bottles for drinks, pickles, salad dressing, and more in Shakopee. At other facilities, plastic bottles get made into new plastic bottles. Recycling exists. Learn the real story behind recycling.
So how did we get everyone on board? So the Twin Cities Metro County counties have a pre-existing relationship from a joint powers group that has since disbanded, but the group still meets, shares information on an informal basis. And so this existing relationship made it really easy to ultimately get 6 out of the 7 counties on board with this campaign. Each county funded the project according to its respective population size. And we knew that we wanted a campaign microsite, videos, social media, and billboards. Ultimately, our goal was to increase the confidence in the Twin Cities metro area counties, the recycling systems that exist there, and educate residents on where the recycling goes, what happens to it, and of course, the undeniable economic benefits to the recycling industry. So we were landed on recycling exists as our main message because it is a direct way to combat the existing body of recycling skepticism, and especially that billboard that I showed you. It was positively framed, so it couldn't be taken out of context, and it was really, really simple. So in order to educate residents of the 6 counties, we needed to determine what categories of items we wanted to talk about so that we can instruct people on how to recycle right. So as you can see, each county uses their own images, their own lists and categories and orders to educate their residents. And we wanted residents to, when they go to the campaign microsite, we wanted them to find their own specific county that they live in. And when you click that county link, which I'll show you in a second, it would take you to, let's say, Dakota County's page, and it would tell you all of the recyclables that Dakota County accepts. So we wanted there to be major consistency among the hub on the microsite so that we weren't saying one thing in one spot and not saying it in the other. The counties are rightfully protective of the education efforts that they have been working on for quite some time. For example, Dakota County's list is standardized among all of the haulers in Dakota County. So this process required a little bit of negotiation between the 6 counties, prioritizing the information that was repeated on 3 to 4 more counties' lists, and then process of elimination on the items that didn't show up quite as often. So here's an example of how we kind of align that. So we landed on these categories of recyclables. On the website, you can hover over the categories. It'll give you a list of the items that fall in that category. And you can scroll down a little bit farther and see, you know, instructions on how to recycle right. And to do that, you know, where do you live? Click on the county that you live in to find the right instructions. To inform residents on where their recycling goes and that it works, we really leaned on the Minnesota Pollution Control Agency's market experts and the Governor's Select Committee on Recycling in the Environment, or SCORE report, to select our data. The markets that we selected were intentional, so we wanted to keep the scope digestible and within communities that people were already familiar, in some cases lived in. So I know it's kind of hard to see on the screen here, but this is on our website. You know, we can put that in the chat. But each category is associated with a market. And for example, paper, this paper and cardboard category, we reference West Rock in St. Paul. And in the category below, metal cans, we reference a company in Winona. So this wasn't possible to specify a direct company, a local company, I should say, in each category, but we were still able to keep it regionally local by saying the Midwest or Wisconsin as a bordering state, which I think helps people kind of, you know, you don't have to think about the whole scope of the United States, right? You can think locally in places that you're familiar with and probably visit often. We also contacted each market to have them check our statements on the website so that if they were asked, they could relay the same information. So it was really very intentional. This whole process was intentional to kind of make sure that people are getting the same information in multiple different spots, or at least as close as possible. I will pass it off to Justin. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Rachel. So Justin Garvey, Director of Brand Strategy at Meter. We're a full service advertising agency that worked on this campaign and came up with the concept behind the campaign. We also have been working with a number of the counties in the metro area over the last 4 or 5 years to create campaigns to inform about recycling and to improve recycling and the rate of recycling in the metro area. But this is a different campaign that we launched to really tackle specifically this problem, this misconception that recycling is a myth. So the campaign concept really was important to this campaign. We've done a lot of work over the years communicating a lot of facts, a lot of information, a lot of education about recycling, but we really needed to do something different with this campaign to make sure it stood out as being kind of a different topic from everything else, really combating this misconception and not so much just informing about recycling. So whenever we create a campaign concept, we create multiple concepts. And this actually, it's interesting, when we were creating the concept, we started with 3 major concepts, and the first concept actually was more of a logical approach. So we actually explored leading with the logic of the numbers of how much gets recycled, and really that it all adds up, and it all adds up to a positive outcome. Ultimately, we determined that that logical approach wasn't going to get people's attention. A lot of that due to the fact that a lot of that is out there. A lot of communication about recycling is very logical, and people can tend to tune that out. So we needed a way to break through and be a little bit more creative with the concept. Another idea that we had was to position recycling and how recycling works as pulling back the curtain on almost sort of a magic trick. So this was a concept we explored, but we opted not to go in that direction because we didn't want people to think that we were trying to mislead anybody. Like a magic trick is actually trying to mislead somebody and be a little bit tricky. We ultimately decided that wasn't the right tone for the campaign. So we did land on the recycling exists myth campaign because we felt that it was important to directly address the idea that recycling is a myth. So that language and that use of the word myth is really pretty pervasive. It is being repeated. People do have seen it, even if they haven't seen that specific billboard that we showed you, that Rachel showed you on the previous slide. People are hearing that phrase, like it's just a myth anyway. So it's really gone beyond just kind of limited instances of people calling recycling a myth. So we thought the best way to do it, we had some hesitation about being not necessarily combative, but being a little too almost like we were only responding specifically to that billboard. But ultimately, we decided that that wasn't the case. And it was very important to be direct and just straight up say, no, it's real. It's not a myth. So once we determined that theme and that concept, we started developing a short set of videos with key messaging takeaways to really make sure we were communicating what we needed to. And that was that materials are getting recycled. And that's really the headline does a lot of that work. It's real, it's not a myth. And then where is recycling? Where is it happening? And what is it getting made into? We thought that those proof points were very, very important, but we wanted to communicate that information within our theme and our campaign concept that is very different from what you might see from government organizations or cities, counties, states, and how they communicate. So we really put that information into a very engaging form. And then that it is important to recycle things the right way. Keeping that empathetic tone, we were very aware throughout the development of this campaign that that the empathetic approach is the most effective approach. And we did not want to guilt or make people feel like they were doing anything wrong, but acknowledge that recycling is confusing and they just need the information. Sometimes it's really hard to keep up on the information, especially if you move around a lot. Rules are different everywhere. So, and then that recycling works to protect the environment and support the local economy. So referencing a lot of those locations where things get recycled, what happens specifically, really make it hit home and be relevant to them. People visited the communities in which the recycling took place and are very aware of those locations. So let's see. Oops. Okay, so I was having a hard time switching the slide there. So our media strategy. So we did utilize and are utilizing heavy digital and social to optimize the targeting and utilize our landing page, recyclingexists.com. So it is a complex message. So we do like the ability to drive a lot of traffic to the website so people can get that information they need to recycle properly in their area. So again, Rachel was talking about how you could actually look in your county and see how you should do things based on the county you live in. So we really emphasized media outlets where we could drive traffic directly to the landing page. We did engage local influencers to help us spread the message, and really they're great at adding authenticity. Letting them run with the message and make it their own was very critical to this campaign. We did utilize Spanish language ads to expand the reach as much as possible. And then this was a very effective component of the campaign, we did engage local news media to secure additional exposure. And based on how we were communicating the message and how different it was, we did have a lot of success with that approach because it really grabbed their attention as something that normally wouldn't come from a county or a group of counties. And then this first run of the campaign is 4 months, which is actually relatively short or shorter than some campaigns because we wanted to keep the frequency high and make a splash. We wanted people to be seeing the campaign in multiple locations and really feel like, okay, what is this all about? I need to go and check it out. I need to go to recyclingexists.com. So the media mix specifically, we did rely on a lot of social media, Facebook, Instagram, Snapchat, and TikTok. The primary audience for this campaign was a fairly wide age demographic, focusing on 22 to 55. So really just, I guess, the millennials and slightly older, really connected to some of the research that we looked at that Elizabeth showed earlier, and where that doubt is starting to creep in which age groups. But utilizing a mix of Facebook, Instagram, Snapchat, and TikTok, we are able to reach that full spectrum of age. Different age groups tend to use different social media platforms more, but utilizing a mix helped us reach across the spectrum. And then streaming TV, really to utilize or to take advantage of our video components. The video that we showed earlier was just one video of a series. So there's many videos talking about many different facts. So people will see a variety of videos. YouTube, and then, like I mentioned, local influencers, the Spanish language television news releases, and then we do have billboard placements in really high traffic areas that get a lot of attention as well. So the results just about halfway through the campaign. We've driven almost 23,000 people so far to the website and over 5 million ad impressions. So of the over 3 million people that live in the Twin Cities area, we have reached 5 million impressions. Estimated that we've reached about 80% of the population with about a frequency of 2 so far in the campaign. So people are seeing the ads multiple times, and we are reaching the vast majority of the population in the metro area. And as I mentioned, significant news media coverage. So these numbers really don't account for that added exposure that the media has given us with this campaign. So in reality, the numbers are much higher. And then one of the most, I guess, one of the benefits of a digital campaign, and with the approach we've taken with focusing on different topics of all the video ads that we're running, we are able to see which information people are engaging with at the highest rate. So we are able to see, for example, that the video about glass recycling is getting the highest click-through rate on Instagram. And then plastic is the next highest on that platform. And then metal cans on Snapchat. So we're able to get that information in real time and help provide more of the information that people want to interact with. So it really gives us the ability to continue to provide relevant information throughout the campaign. So that is the results of the campaign to date, about halfway through. So it will continue to the end of April, actually, and then likely get revived on future runs. And I think I am passing it back off to Alec.
Yes, thanks, Justin. That was fantastic. Again, great campaign that you all are doing. I think there's some really creative thought, and clearly a lot of thought has gone into the campaign. So our hats off to you. One thing I did want to riff off of about the media engagement in particular, I think that's a really important point that is crucial. And I'll point out, we did drop, my colleague Tyler dropped into the chat link to a presentation from Mass Recycle, which is another example of someone where they've had a direct engagement with the media, and really seeing that as a strategy just to try and head off some of the misinformation or just uneducated points that are being made on the reporter sides, making sure that they have the information to really understand the system that they're representing when they do stories. So that's another great case study there that you can find the link in the chat. It will also point out that, again, we're going to have all the resources that are going into the chat, as well as we're going to take a sort of a cleaned up version of the comments that all of you are sharing in the chat, and just some of the tips, some of the ideas that folks are putting in there. We'll be making those available along with the recording and with the slide deck. Will all be posted to the website in the next couple of days, and we'll be sending out an email to everybody who's registered once those are up. So just keep that in mind. And I also, just to the side up here, encourage, are there other examples, or are any of you doing actual campaigns, sort of structured outreach PSA efforts similar to what recycling exists? If you have examples of what either you're involved with in your own community or organization, or examples that you're aware of, go ahead and share those in the chat as well. And again, we'll archive these after the program. And so with that, if everybody wants to turn on their cameras, we have some questions that we can address here. I'll point out we are about 5 minutes from the hour. I'm going to leave this open for probably another 10 or so minutes. So for those of you, if you're not able to stick around for all the Q&A, just know that we'll have this posted. But I did want to make sure we had some time to go through some of the questions that have come in. So let me start out with a question. I know there were a couple questions related to the campaign. One question, either for Rachel or Justin, but there's a question from Jennifer. Is there a possibility to partner with the Recycling Exists campaign to create sort of a localized version in another community? Is that something the folks can reach out and work with you?
It's not anything we've talked about, but it's definitely something we would explore. Yeah, for sure. And have to talk to everybody involved and everything. But yeah, it's definitely worth a conversation.
Great, good. Another question from Laura is budget. Are you able to share information just about what the budget was for actually putting together the campaign and communicating it?
Yeah, so the budget for the overall campaign was under $100,000. So media time and agency time to develop the campaign. We did have an existing relationship and a good amount of existing work in one form or another that we've done with the counties. So we were able to keep it pretty efficient, having an established relationship with an agency partner to be able to go into a campaign like this is going to be more cost effective than starting possibly from scratch. But we were able to execute a whole 4-month campaign for under $100,000 total.
Great, good to know. There are a couple questions that have come in, and I'll throw this out to everybody, but I see sort of a version of this question from John. There's another one earlier from Ashwani. But when we step back and we talk about just our general, how we do messaging out to the public, one observation has been that, we've always talked about the EPA's waste hierarchy: reduce, reuse, recycle. But we also know in practice, a lot of the messaging that goes out for practical reasons, it's just about recycling, because there's a feeling that that's where we can really get engagement, where we sort of the low-hanging fruit, and there's still a lot of that fruit that we need to be picking in a sense. But are we at a sort of a pivot point where, for the reasons of transparency and trust and understanding that recycling is not the ultimate solution, that there are broader issues, and all, I guess, are there any thoughts about how do we bring in these other broader issues about consumption, and that knowing that it's hard to, the bandwidth of how much information we can get across to folks. But I would love to hear any thoughts any of you have.
I have thoughts. Are you talking to
Elizabeth,
the whole group?
Perfect.
Yes, absolutely. Reduce, reuse, recycle. That is a hierarchy. We do tend, I think, understandably, local programs tend to focus on recycling because there is so much information that they need to communicate to residents that they just get started and they get right to the point as much as they can, because it is very complex. And so I have seen more and more repairing cafes. I've seen a lot more communities moving to accepting food waste. I think that's good progress. I think we're headed towards it. And I think that I don't think it can hurt to include a reduce, reuse, recycle, little reminder on everything. And I think it actually can, just focusing on recycling the people in their homes, when they're talking about it, they're talking about a larger wasting less. That's like, you know, so if you can find ways to communicate with more people about more things, and so through a campaign like this or through something else where you have an opportunity for dialogue, even because it's often not the first thing that they need, it's like the second or third thing that they want to talk about is really what is sort of their pain point.
For a couple of the counties in this metro area, we actually manage more of the messaging than just the Recycling Exists campaign. So we do create an annual calendar of our messaging that includes disposal of household hazardous waste, yard waste, food scraps recycling, reuse like fix-it clinics, and just general promotion of reuse. And then general recycling, that's in addition to the Recycling Exists campaign.
Yeah, I have some thoughts too. I think there's a way to kind of to talk about all of these things without denying the validity of recycling, because I think the more you get into complex sentences and you start adding, you know, the buts and the nots, you know, I think that's where people get really hung up and say, well, wait, you just said recycling exists, but it's not perfect. So then, you know, and it creates this kind of like inner turmoil. So right now, you know, we just kind of give people the straight up fact: recycling exists. Here's how you recycle right in Dakota County. If you recycle this type of plastic bottle or this can, this is what happens to it. And then also separately, then we also plug a ton of waste reduction and reuse efforts. We do follow that hierarchy. That's the preferred method, but we try to do so in a way that doesn't negate one or the other, because we still need people to think about recycling and to recycle, even if, you know, we have a lot of waste reduction efforts going on. So I think there's a balance to be struck for sure.
And the question is how we effectively balance that, and that's something I think we'll continue to explore the nuance of that. Some other questions that have come up. This is one from Ashwani, and she was asking more just broader, not necessarily about messaging, but just around single stream, dual stream. That we've and she's asking, is there any sort of reliable analysis around the contamination, about the effectiveness of single stream programs versus the dual stream, and any have we gone too far with single stream, or is this really playing to our advantage?
It is such a great question. It's a question that we have been asking for 10 years and kind of answering over and over is so you'll get cleaner material if you have people sort it, but you'll have fewer people participating and collecting fewer things. So if your goal is to have the cleanest material, maybe you want to stick with a single source, separated recycling. If you need to get the most material to divert the most from your landfills, you'll want to look at single stream. Now, one of the things that is kind of might be a piece in the middle is unbagging. So if you can get people to not bag their recyclables, collect them in a plastic liner, but to instead collect them maybe in a paper bag, or to dump out the material that they do collect in a plastic bag, they'll see how clean or dry it actually is. And they'll kind of might make that change, having it be, having their material, the packages be empty and dry on their own. So more or cleaner.
Yep.
They're both, we need both. So
yeah, I have seen at least one life cycle analysis that suggested that even for everything that you lose through contamination or just having to downgrade with single stream, I've seen at least one LCA that on balance, it was suggesting that single stream programs resulted in a higher GHG emission reduction. There's a lot of nuance to how life cycle LCAs work and what you can get from that, but I've also kind of had a strong tug and pull, wondering was this the right direction to go, but to the points you were making. Here's another question coming back to the Recycling Exists campaign, and this had to do with local influencers. This is a question from Kathy. While working with local influencers, did you give them a lot of guidance, or just share your resources, ask them to share? How did you engage with them?
We do try to keep that pretty loose. We do have influencers that we work with regularly and we trust. So that is very important to be able to give them information and let them do their thing. You don't want to try to micromanage an influencer to the point where you're just forcing them to say a certain thing in a certain way. That's really not how that works effectively. So it's about giving them the tools to work with and the information they need, and then letting them come up with something to communicate with their audience, because they know how to do that best. And that's why we're bringing them in.
Great. Another question for the Recycling Exists campaign from Katie. How are the member communities adopting and utilizing it? Are they taking this and doing their own, pushing it out in their own ways, or is this just something that's being centrally coordinated?
For the most, go ahead, Rachel.
No, you go, you go.
I was just gonna say, for the most part, we are managing the campaign, but some of the counties have decided to handle their social media components themselves. So it could go either way. They were given the option: do they want to put it out on their own social media and manage their own even paid social media components, or it was part of our strategy to manage it as an agency too. So they did have the option there, but for the most part, we're managing the majority of it.
We also created a resources page for the cities within the counties that participated. So we have like a newsletter content that they can add into newsletters. We have social media posts and captions with the videos, so that all of the cities within the county can promote it in a way that, again, is consistent messaging, right? So we wrote everything for everyone, basically, so that we got the same message across.
Got it. Good. Missy raises a question in the that I think, and this is a stepping back, but an interesting question about communicating. Are there resources? Are there ways of communicating recycling and honestly waste prevention in general as a greenhouse priority? In the national dialogue around how we address climate change, there's a lot of talk around EVs, around solar and waste, but and I know generally when you look at waste in general and you frame it in terms of a downstream landfill, it tends to show up as a kind of a small element of the emissions profile. But when you put that into a materials management context and you're looking at the upstream and you're connecting these dots together, as well as just acknowledging that the impacts that emissions do have as a topic, and I guess I'm just going to jump in and just answer some of this myself, and point out that there are a lot of LCA's life cycle analysis work that has been done. I mean, there's a lot of evidence pointing to the positive impact on climate reduction from recycling, specifically tied to, again, how we're displacing the need for virgin materials. As I mentioned earlier on, LCAs are very tricky. It's very easy to take them out of context. It's very easy for them to give you information that doesn't apply to other situations. But certainly from my experience, having looked at a lot of these, there's clear evidence that the recycling has a positive impact on emissions. And I think, from my perspective, I think it's important that we be putting that into the conversation as well. And again, to Elizabeth's point, we have to manage what kind of information we can give to what kind of audiences. We would love to sit everybody down for an hour-long, lecture, but that's never going to happen. And so there are certain audiences and certain opportunities where we take that, but where we can start to see that in and really make that a more concrete. I think there is value to be doing with that, and there's certainly the evidence is out there. The myth-busting blog that I referred to earlier that I'll be publishing the next week or two will be linking to a number of those studies, along with other just sort of evidence about recycling's impact that we can include with that.
Yeah, I add on to that, like measurement, our organization, the Recycling Partnership, relies heavily on measurement. It is expensive and we know it's expensive. And so we try to do it so that others don't have to. But if you're doing measurement, we'd love to also collaborate with you. We have some best practices or we have a lot of experience with the measurement. And so like the highest level of information would be to look at, like what actually happened. So taking sets of carts or sets of recycling from households and looking at how much trash is in the recycling, how much recycling is in the trash. A capture rate is what we call that. And then, the tying an awareness campaign or an information campaign to actual results is really tricky. I mean, the big brands spend a lot of money trying to do that, of like, we advertise this, did we see more sales? And where did we see more sales? And so part of it is a little bit of reading the tea leaves, but there are things you can measure, but it will take time. And so you have to invest in getting the message out there enough to reasonably be received and then acted on. And so when you send out a mailer, it's probably shorter time to a potential impact versus, in the airwaves. And so, or a coordinated multi-channel campaign. So yes, measurement. And yes, it is kind of complicated. So love to talk more about that with anyone. And I'm sure Justin and Rachel would too.
Yeah, it is really about a long-term commitment to communication with any type of advertising, but with this type of behavior change communication, a commitment to it, and not necessarily changing course if you don't feel like you're seeing what you want to see in a month or two. That's just not the way behavior change works. You have to commit to it long term, and really and stick with the plan.
And I think I would put a coda onto that. Just coming back to a point that Elizabeth, you made in your presentation, that we need more communication in general. And I know some of the state of recycling report that the Recycling Partnership put out, just pointing out, if we were to increase our communication engagement budgets, and I don't have the numbers in front of me, but really connecting a tangible ROI value to doing that outreach directly results in improved contamination and more material going in the stream. And so communication and engagement outreach tends to be low on the food chain when it comes to local government budgets, but I think we need to appreciate that it does have that impact. If you make that investment, you do get a results from it, and that's not something just to ignore. We're going to wrap things up. I know we do have a few more questions that I'm afraid we're not going to be able to get to. I did have one question that had come out from a number of folks in the registration form, which had to do with I apologize. I just blanked out on what the question is. So we're going to have to park that. Thank you, Justin, Rachel, Elizabeth. This is all great information. Again, this is something that we could go on for another hour. There's a lot to talk about here. I encourage, though, I think at conferences, other programs, when we get together with professionals, this is an important topic. I think this is something we need to be elevating. We need to ask, can we get this onto the agenda of conferences, et cetera, where we're going to, because this is something that impacts all of us in the industry. And going back to a point I made earlier, if we lose people, if people really start to walk away with that sense of, it's not worth my effort, that's something that has a long-term impact that we really need to nip in the bud. So great information. Thank you, everybody. I do have a couple closing things I want to go over while I have everybody. I'm going to pull my screen share again. Again, thank you, Elizabeth, Rachel, Justin. Great information that you had. Appreciate that. And as I said, we'll have the presentations and the recording up in the next few days. We do have another upcoming program coming on April 23rd, just slightly under a month. It's going to be focusing on taking more of an upstream focus with this program. How do we start to take some of the assumptions around materials management and how we consume, how we do procurement, how do and environmentally preferred purchasing, how do we start to connect that more tangibly to actual inventory data? This has always been a notoriously difficult area to get information, let alone be able to translate that into policy and strategy. So we're going to have some case study presentations as well as a bit of sort of a mini primer to go with this program on April 23rd, and we'll be sharing more information about this in the coming week. As I said, we'll have the slides and everything from today will be posted online. Also want to point out that we do have an extensive archive now of these recordings and slides from all of the presentations programs over the last 3 years from this webinar series that you can find on the website on a whole range of topics here. You can find those at buschsystems.com/blog. Also, for those of you who are at a college or university, this is a special shout out I want to make. Busch Systems is working with ASHE, NWF, Kirk, Zero Waste Campus Council, Campus Races, Zero Waste. We're partnering together to conduct a survey right now, trying to better understand how some of these trends are evolving around best practices that have been shown to really have an impact on improving recycling. This is, again, specific to college and universities, but we encourage schools to take 5-10 minutes to fill out this survey form that we've created, asking questions like, what percentage of schools have implemented uniform bin standards, or have implemented systems where you shift responsibility from custodians to staff to empty their own desk side waste, removing waste baskets for trash from classrooms. These are just a few of the 15 or so questions. Again, it takes about 10 minutes to fill out, but we'll be taking the results. We'll be publishing them this summer. And the idea is to make this a resource to help understand some of the trends that can help those of you in a sustainability office, sell some of these programs and initiatives to your own leadership. So encourage folks to take a few minutes to fill that out. The survey will be up for another few weeks, and you can find the links here from either our homepage, you'll find a slider, or you can hit that QR code there on your screen. If we don't have a specific relationship with any of the certifying bodies, but if you are signed up for a waste or sustainability related certification program, and this program is something that is likely to be accepted as a CEU, we are happy to provide you just with documentation that you did attend, and you can reach out to my colleague Marissa Caldwell at buschsystems.com here, Marissa C at Busch Systems. We will, in just a minute, I'm going to hand it over to some colleagues from our sales department who are going to talk a little bit about our products. But at the very end of the program, those of you stick along or look for an email tomorrow, we would love to get your feedback on this webinar. If you have any notes you want to share with the speakers or how we can improve the programs, we encourage you to fill out that survey. And with that, I'm going to bring the official program to an end. But again, if you're not familiar with Busch Systems, we are a maker of fine recycling and bin products, and that's what helps to support this webinar series. So the rest of us are going to check off, but I want to invite Sarah and Brian from our sales team, who are going to give a product demo and answer any questions the folks have who do choose to want to stay on for this part of the program. Otherwise, thank you everybody for attending today. Sarah, all yours.
Thank you, Alec. Good afternoon, everyone. Are we feeling confident? I know that I am. That was a fantastic webinar. I do want to thank again Elizabeth, Rachel, Justin, and of course, Alec for facilitating and providing such amazing details and information, case studies, statistics, extremely helpful in regards to helping gauge in any type of recycling myths or programs or statistics that can help show some validity and actual information to it. Now, with that said, we all know that recycling is not a one size fits all. Every single program is different. Recycling can be different, various public spaces in counties, cities. So really do thrive on consistency, just as the panelists and Alec were touching base on that. Here at Busch, we highly suggest consistency, education, messaging, coloration, any type of factor that would help with a successful recycling program. And here at Busch, we can provide any type of specific collection needs within your program. So basically, I'm just going to go through a quick overview. Feel free to stop me at any time or throw in a question through the chat. I can certainly address them at any time. And we're going to jump right in. As Alec was mentioning near the end there, we do actually have a fantastic office combination available that has been extremely successful in various office environments, educational, desk side collections. So we do like to promote the larger recycling. This is our 3-gallon desk side recycler with a small footprint that can sit on the desk or under the desk, as well as it's accompanied with a smaller hanging waste basket that sits nicely on the side. This also can be mixed and matched with a larger quart that we do suggest that can go underneath the desk with the hanging waste basket. We have had great success in regards to implementing office collection systems. This would be at your desk at the end of the week. Everyone's responsible for going to the centralized collection station and disposing properly, which means would be a higher diversion rate. And it's a lot more easier the more you do it, and education is key on this type of program. It's kind of like a bad habit. Once you start, you can't stop, and for good reason. With that said, making a mess over here. This series is our Billy Box series. This is a 10-gallon. You can customize any type of colors, streams, labels. Really great in K-12 break rooms, smaller areas that need different types of collection streams. Really popular. Also comes in a 7-gallon. We stock these in blue, black, gray, and green. In regards to consistent messaging, we always highly suggest color coordination is consistent and key, especially even take into consideration the placement of your containers. So we always highly recommend that the food scraps organics is placed beside the waste and the trash, just to kind of be further away from the recycling, just to increase those diversion rates, and accompanied with signage and labels. There are so many different types of collection streams: mixed recycling, cans and bottles, glass only, paper only. We all know that it can get very confusing if it's different in many different public spaces. So consistency, again, is key. We always suggest colors, signage, and consistency throughout your different spaces. This really kind of helps gauge public-facing messaging, as Rachel did touch base on her Recycling Myth campaign, that we all need to collaborate and work together, such as Minnesota State, that several counties are coming together to work on one standardized message just to help gauge public and help in the same sort of messaging. This is our Spectrum series. This is a modular series, which means in this ever so changing worlds with mandates, these are separated bodies that nestle well together. They're powder coated metal steel units, which means the configuration options are endless. You can add and take away streams that are updating within your programs so that you would not have to source a whole new collection stream. You wouldn't have to buy a whole new container. You could buy one and add on, or move to different placement areas within your establishment. So again, we have the Ellipse here, that's an 8-gallon. We have our Cube Slim, which is a 10, and all the way up to the full cube is a 24-gallon. So we do have the variety of capacities, so you can kind of mix and match those capacities that work well within those specific areas. This is our Waste Watcher series. Again, this is an exact play, but in a plastic version. We do always recommend and suggest a larger recycling with the smaller organics and waste. The 32-gallon units are, the Excel units go up to 32 gallons. We always have restricted openings that we highly suggest as well. Just kind of makes the public kind of think more instead of walking up and disposing right away. They can kind of gauge with the colors, the commingling, the signage. We do have a lot of customers that have custom signage within their counties or cities or public spaces to really hone in on those exact items that need to be in that collection stream. For example, Dakota County does a great job on actual live images and really helps with the disposing in the correct containers. Right here is our Aristota unit. It's one of our top 3 melamine bodied units with a stainless steel hinged lid. Not only do we pride ourselves in customization, but we do really think of the whole picture in regards to even the servicing aspect of things. So this is at 15 gallons each stream, but we can go up to a 28-gallon XL version as well. So this 15-gallon is an ergonomical liner, which means the liner hangs off to the side, so you're not having to bend over, and the service staff, facility staff is not having to bend down and strain their backs when servicing. But we do like to showcase cans and bottles. Really important if you do have a bottle collection or bottle depot, glass only, aluminum cans. Cannot ever stress enough that signage and consistent messaging is key and would help in regards to the correct disposal. We do also have this is one of our newest outdoor units to our product line. This is called the Renegade. It's a 50-gallon outdoor container. You do have the option to create any type of lid you're looking for. So if you're really wanting to have the restricted openings, you can actually have the option to have all 3 sides closed with 1 circle opening at the front. So again, helping in regards to really wanting to touch base and not allowing the full amount of items that could go into the waste. So if you have the circle, then obviously the restrictive opening kind of shows the public how they can dispose properly. This container here is made out of 100% PCR content. I also meant to add, we have launched our newest hanging waste basket as well as 100% PCR. Busch Systems is very proud of this. We are slowly coming out with a continuous products that are more and more manufactured with PCR, post-consumer recycled content. This container also comes, sorry, flipping back and forth, but this Renegade also comes in waste as well. And we do have customized signage at the front that we do have available. And I do apologize, I know everyone's been on here for quite a long time, so I'm just trying to get through as much as I can. All right. We are very excited and happy as we continuously talk about signage and label and messaging is key. Busch has done it. We cannot stress enough that the more messaging, the more consistency that is involved, the better and successful programs that will be put forth. This container is our mosaic units, extremely customizable, available in single, double, triples. You could even add on to a 6-stream, just depending on your internal collections. You can customize the container, the front panels, the side panels. We've had extreme success with college universities actually running campaigns on customized signage just to engage the students, and it's been working out really well. Just to kind of show you an example of, you can go pretty plain Jane, or we've even had customers that list specific items that can be disposed of, just to kind of help in that gauge of correct disposal. These are at a 32-gallon capacity, option for casters and a back sign frame as well. You could also mix match your, we do have circle, slot, mixed, and full openings available. And they connect easily together with the connecting bar at the side, so you can take away and add on, just kind of like the Spectrum series.
Question here, are there any clear-sided containers? Would love to see event containers.
We do have, and unfortunately, we do have a wire event container, which is essentially a wire frame with a magnet lid that is a lid here. So we have 2 magnets that sit on the internal side. So your clear bag would go in between the liner, and then the lid would be placed on the metal wire vent frame, and it will hold the bag in place. So you could definitely utilize the clear liners in that regard. We have done custom containers with clear sides for airports specifically. So if that's something of interest, that's definitely an option that we can explore. Oh, perfect. And Tyler added the but that's pretty much kind of wraps up the product demonstration that I have available here. If you're interested in any other specific details, please feel free to reach out, and we'll have the appropriate representative touch base.
So what is the white container you didn't show yet? I'm assuming.
My apologies. Cannot forget this guy here. This is our mezzo container, so it's a full-bodied unit. We also we do like to recommend or touch base when we are talking about recommendations that you really want to take into consideration if you're looking for a full-bodied unit with different collection streams. If you're looking for separate, there's so many factors that come into play of hinged lids, your facility staff, just your particular preference internally. And Busch does a really great job on different types of units that would fit and be the most suitable option in that regard if you have preferences. This is our mezzo series. It's kind of a play on our Spectrum series, but in a full body. So it's a powder coated metal steel, 18 gauge, comes in a double and a triple. They are 15 gallons each capacity. And this is just an example of customization that we have offered. We could add body decals to any type of container as well. But this is extremely popular in lobby areas, convention centers, and just a really nice looking, aesthetically pleasing container.
Jennifer said thank you.
No problem, Jennifer.
Any other questions? Please feel free to put it in the chat.
Okay. Well, I hope that everyone enjoys today's webinar. It was extremely informative, and thank you for taking the time, and I hope you all enjoy the rest of your day.
Thank you so much, Sarah and Brian. Lovely to see you again. And I hope everyone has a great day. Bye.